My parents own a small shop in our town. It's nothing special, just selling regular groceries and food from local businesses. They had been running it for over 20 years, and my dad took it very seriously, keeping the store open until midnight and sometimes even staying later. When I turned 16, I started helping out a few hours a week, and when I turned 18, I started working full-time while doing online college courses. One night, my dad was off, and my mom was dealing with some health issues, so I was the only one closing the store. The last few hours of the night are usually quiet, with hardly any customers. Around 9 p.m., only 1 or 2 people had come in, so I grabbed a sandwich from the fridge and took a quick lunch break. Of course, right when I did, someone walked in. I hurried back to the front desk and set my sandwich aside, waiting for the customer to finish shopping. I pulled out my phone and, after a couple of minutes, looked up to see how the customer was doing, but I didn't see him. I scanned the room again and still didn't see him anywhere. Thinking he was maybe in some off angle I couldn't see, I waited a few more minutes, but he still never came into sight. I didn't hear anything either. Feeling uneasy, I walked around the counter and started looking through the aisles. It didn't take long to find him in the second aisle. A man was crouched down at the end, staring at the floor and not moving or making a sound. "Sir?" I called out. The man immediately looked up at me, then stood up and continued to stare at me. All I could focus on were his eyes. They were wide and full, kind of in an unsettling way. After a couple of seconds, he quickly walked away and out of the store without saying a word. Once he left, my first reaction was to check where he had been crouching to see if there was any reason to be there. But there wasn't. The whole time, he had just been crouching in the aisle. It freaked me out because of how odd it was. I went up to the front door and checked that he had fully left the area. It was dark out, but I didn't see him anywhere. I went back to the counter feeling more alert. 3 hours passed and not a single customer came in. It was now time to close up, and after so much time passing, I wasn't thinking about that man anymore. I was just ready to go home. I walked up to the front and locked the door, grabbed my bag, and started walking toward the back door to leave when an extremely loud bang screeched through the store. I stopped in place, knowing it had to come from somewhere in the back, and it was so loud that I had no idea what it could have been. Worried, I slowly walked to the corner and looked down the back hallway. At the far end, dust was scattering through the air as the metal back door was loosely open. Standing right in the hallway was that same man from earlier. He was staring at me with the same wide-open eyes. I didn't know what to say or do. It was like I was just frozen in that moment. Despite his clear determination to break in, he didn't look angry. He had no emotion at all. I took a few slow steps back, then ran for the front, leaving the store and running to the other side of the street, calling 911. I called my dad too, and he rushed over to make sure I was okay. The man was gone when the police arrived, but he left behind a sledgehammer sitting on the pavement behind the door. At first sight, nothing looked to be missing or stolen, so his intentions are anyone's guess. It's clear he was unstable, though, which means he could have been planning anything. Thankfully, I didn't have to find out what that was. The police took my statement and examined the store thoroughly. They dusted for fingerprints and searched for any clues that might indicate what the man was after. They assured me they would increase patrols in the area, but it was little comfort. I couldn't shake the image of his wide, emotionless eyes. The next day, my dad installed extra security measures, new locks, security cameras, and even a panic button behind the counter. I was grateful for the added security, but it did little to ease my mind. The man's behavior was so bizarre, and the randomness of his actions left me on edge. A week passed without incident, but I couldn't stop thinking about that night. Every creak and groan of the old building made me jump. I was constantly on edge, waiting for something else to happen. My parents assured me that it was just a random event, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. One night I was closing up again, trying to push the thoughts of the man from my mind. I locked the front door and did a final check of the aisles. As I was about to head to the back, I heard a faint whisper. My heart pounded as I turned to look, but there was nothing there. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, and headed to the back door. As I reached for the handle, a chill ran down my spine. I turned slowly and saw a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was the man. His wide eyes stared at me, unblinking. I froze, fear gripping me. He started to move toward me, slow and deliberate. I didn't wait to see what he would do. I bolted for the front door, unlocking it with shaking hands and running out into the night. I didn't stop until I reached the safety of a nearby restaurant. I called the police again, and they arrived quickly, but the man was gone once more. The police took my statement again, and my parents decided to close the store early for a few days while they figured out what to do. My dad installed even more security measures, and we all tried to move on from the incident. I still work at the store, but I never stay late anymore. The memory of the man's wide, emotionless eyes haunts me, and I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, watching. The night was thick with darkness as Emily Parker drove through the winding roads leading to Willow Creek Hospital. She had just moved to the small town to start her new job as a nurse on the night shift. Excitement mingled with nervousness as she approached the hospital, its imposing silhouette looming against the moonlit sky. Entering the hospital, Emily was greeted by the eerie silence that often accompanies the late hours. The reception area was deserted, the only sound the faint hum of fluorescent lights. She made her way to the nurses' station, where she was met by her supervisor, Sarah. "Welcome to Willow Creek Hospital, Emily," Sarah said with a warm smile. "I'm glad to have you on the team. Tonight, you'll be working on the 3rd floor, where we keep the psychiatric ward." Emily's stomach churned at the thought of spending her first night alone in the psychiatric ward. But she nodded, determined to prove herself. As the night wore on, Emily tended to her duties, checking on patients and administering medications. The halls of the psychiatric ward were dimly lit, casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the flickering light. Around midnight, Emily received a call from one of the nurses on the 2nd floor. A new patient had been admitted, an elderly man found wandering the streets in a state of confusion. He had been brought in by the police and placed in room 312 on the 3rd floor. Curious, Emily made her way to room 312 to check on the new patient. As she approached, she heard a faint whispering coming from inside. She hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. The room was empty, save for the elderly man lying in the bed, his eyes wide with fear. He muttered incomprehensible words under his breath, his hands trembling as he clutched the bed sheets. "Are you okay?" Emily asked softly, stepping closer to the bed. The man's eyes snapped to hers, and he grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Beware the shadows," he whispered urgently. "They're coming for us all." Before Emily could respond, the man released her arm and sank back onto the bed, his eyes closing as if in exhaustion. Emily's heart raced as she left the room, the man's warning echoing in her mind. As the night progressed, strange things began to happen on the 3rd floor of Willow Creek Hospital. Lights flickered, doors slammed shut on their own, and whispers echoed through the empty halls. Emily tried to brush off the unsettling occurrences, chalking them up to her nerves and the late hour. But as the night wore on, the feeling of unease only grew stronger. Around 2 a.m., Emily was making her rounds when she heard a blood-curdling scream coming from the end of the hallway. She broke into a run, her heart pounding in her chest as she reached the source of the sound. Room 312. She burst through the door, expecting to find the elderly man in distress. But the room was empty, the bed neatly made as if it had never been occupied. Confused and frightened, Emily searched the room, but there was no sign of the patient anywhere. Dread gnawed at her insides as she made her way back to the nurses' station. Something was terribly wrong in Willow Creek Hospital, and Emily feared she was about to uncover its dark secret. Over the next few nights, Emily's suspicions were confirmed as the paranormal activity in the hospital escalated. Patients reported seeing shadowy figures lurking in their rooms, and strange symbols appeared on the walls seemingly overnight. Desperate for answers, Emily delved into the hospital's history, uncovering a dark and twisted past. Willow Creek Hospital had once been an asylum, notorious for its cruel and inhumane treatment of patients. Legend had it that the hospital's founder, Dr. Jonathan Monroe, had dabbled in occult practices, conducting sinister experiments on the vulnerable souls under his care. It was said that the spirits of those who had suffered within the asylum still haunted its halls, trapped for eternity in a limbo between the living and the dead. As Emily delved deeper into the hospital's past, she discovered that Dr. Monroe's most notorious experiment had taken place on the 3rd floor, the very same floor where she now worked. It was here that he had conducted rituals to summon dark entities from the depths of the underworld, sacrificing the souls of his patients in exchange for unholy power. Terrified but determined, Emily vowed to put an end to the haunting of Willow Creek Hospital and free the tormented spirits trapped within its walls. But as she delved deeper into the mysteries of the hospital, she soon realized that some secrets were meant to stay buried. The fluorescent lights hummed softly as Jenna stepped into the empty aisles of Market Haven. Freshly hired for the night shift, she was eager to prove her worth and make a good impression on her first night. Her supervisor, Mr. Thompson, greeted her with a weary smile. "Welcome to the night shift, Jenna. It's quiet around here after hours, but that doesn't mean it's without its surprises." Jenna nodded, her excitement tinged with a hint of nervousness. She was assigned to work alone in the grocery section, tasked with restocking shelves and ensuring everything was in order before the morning rush. As the night wore on, Jenna found herself growing increasingly uneasy. The once familiar aisles of Market Haven seemed to take on a sinister air in the darkness, the shadows stretching out like grasping fingers. Around midnight, Jenna heard a soft tapping coming from the back of the store. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest as she strained to listen. But when she investigated, she found nothing amiss. Shaking off her unease, Jenna returned to her duties. But the feeling of being watched lingered, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. As the nights passed, strange occurrences began to plague Market Haven. Items would go missing from the shelves, only to reappear in unlikely places hours later. Lights flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance in the corners of Jenna's vision. One night, as Jenna was closing up shop, she heard a faint whispering coming from the back of the store. She followed the sound, her heart pounding in her chest, until she reached the storeroom. The door creaked open on rusty hinges, revealing a scene straight out of a nightmare. The shelves were overturned, and the floor was littered with broken bottles and scattered merchandise. But what chilled Jenna to the bone were the shadows that seemed to writhe and twist in the darkness, whispering words she couldn't quite make out. Desperate for answers, Jenna delved into the history of Market Haven, determined to uncover the source of the strange occurrences that plagued the store. What she discovered sent shivers down her spine. Years ago, Market Haven had been the site of a grisly murder. A young woman had been found brutally slain in the storeroom, her death shrouded in mystery. Legend had it that the spirit of the murdered woman still haunted the halls of Market Haven, seeking vengeance on those who dared to disturb her rest. Terrified but determined, Jenna vowed to put an end to the haunting of Market Haven once and for all. But as she delved deeper into the store's dark past, she soon realized that some secrets were meant to stay buried. Armed with nothing but her courage, Jenna ventured into the depths of Market Haven, determined to confront the malevolent spirit that haunted its aisles. As she made her way through the empty store, she could feel the presence of the vengeful spirit closing in around her. Whispers echoed in the darkness, taunting her, urging her to turn back. But Jenna pressed on, her resolve unwavering. Finally, she reached the storeroom where the spirit of the murdered woman was said to dwell. There, in the flickering light of a single flashlight, Jenna faced off against the ghostly apparition. The air crackled with dark energy as the two adversaries clashed, each determined to emerge victorious. In the end, it was Jenna's bravery and determination that won the day. With a final triumphant shout, she banished the vengeful spirit from Market Haven, freeing the tormented soul trapped within its walls. As dawn broke over the empty aisles of the store, Jenna emerged victorious, her faith in the power of the human spirit restored. And though the memory of that fateful night would haunt her forever, she knew that she had faced her fears and emerged stronger for it.